Hello and welcome to the Classic Car Weekly podcast. We're back with this week's sibling podcast to the popular weekly paper. I'm the title staff writer, a rather sickly Jesse Billington, and again I'm back at our Peterborough HQ with features editor Chris Hope.
Hi.
And managing editor James Sadlier.
Greetings.
Gentlemen, how are you?
Yeah, probably struggling with cold about as much as you are, I think, at the moment, but yeah, not bad.
All equally congested. James, are you free?
I'm the only one not, so being in this lovely room, I'm probably going to catch something, but hey, it's worth it to be with you guys.
Yeah, we brought you in here to bring you down to our level of perfection. As always, we'll kick off the podcast with a quick Our Classics update. Chris, we'll start with you.
God, this is going to be quick. Yeah, nothing. Nothing since last time. It's still sat there. It's still plans to have a word with some specialists. I think it's going to be new year now, so I do need to disconnect the battery though, because I've not done that since about October, so that's at least going to need a trickle charge. I keep on hoping that we're going to get sort of a nice day, but yeah, it happens, it arrives, and then I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, brilliant, and then just day gets away from me, and the following day, downpours, so yeah. And the roads have been salted as well, so I'm a little bit unsure about it. But yeah, I could at least sort of wheel it out onto the driveway and just let it tick over. I've not even done that. So yeah, very disappointing. Very disappointing.
There's already a healthy briny grime out there to sort of start attacking classic cars. James, on the classics front, how are you doing?
Yeah, not too bad. I had you guys outside not even an hour ago looking at my rear bumper on the Polo. Volkswagen Polo Mark II bread van for any new listeners. And I've put a little dink in it and I don't know how to sort it out myself, but you two were very helpful in recommending a hot kettle, hot water, and a clamp to try and...
I think so. You've slightly stoved in the bumper, haven't you? So the rear bumper, old plastic, 80s plastic, that is not going to take timely to any sort of big shocks, is it? So just a little bit of gentle persuasion, it should pop straight back out. So
I hope so. What kind of clamp did you say?
I think a G-clamp, if you can just get a bit of wood behind it, sort of thing.
Yeah, something you could hook onto it and just apply a bit of gentle, consistent pressure with a bit of heat to it just to soften the plastic enough to bring it out will do the job nicely.
Definitely doesn't need a new bumper though.
No.
There's perhaps half an hour and a bit of fiddling around on
Famous last words and all that.
Yeah.
When it comes off in my
and
hand.
the entire bumper is now free of the car, like, no.
We were talking
Sebring Polo.
Yeah, the Sebring Spec Polo.
Was it last episode or the episode before we were talking about your midget without bumpers off? I'm going to do the same with the Polo and it's going to look aesthetic-y.
Yeah, but his can be MOT exempt. You need to be able to pass an MOT. It's not going to quite work for you.
Yeah, mine sort of works without bumpers legally and aesthetically. I think
apart from that, I went to look at two Audi TTs over the weekend, but both a little bit to my mind they're overpriced. But the search continues. I'm not going to rush into it. I've got a perfectly working Volkswagen Polo, and the TT dream is still alive. And yeah.
Well, the conversation turned to is the Mark II TT a classic yet? I mean, we're all fairly sort of convinced on the first generation ones, but you were asking us about the second ones, and I definitely think they are. So.
Well, they're so similar to the Mark 1. They almost feel like a Mark 1 facelift.
Smoother look.
Yeah, certainly with regards to aesthetics. I'm not too sure about underneath, but I don't know. I think they are. As you guys said, was it 2007? The Mark II was launched, so that's quite a long time, for an old design. I'm not even sure. We're not about new cars. I don't even know what Mark we're on at the moment, but I'm guessing 3 or 4. What is it? 4?
TT? I think it's Mark 4 TT.
Yeah, 4 because they don't make the Audi TT anymore, do they?
No, I think that's gone as well. Actually, yeah, they've dialed that one back. It's I've lost track of where we're up to with TTs and most modern cars. To be fair, Peugeots keep appearing, and I don't know what they are.
Yeah, well, surely the fact they don't make TTs anymore cements some classic status to the.
This is going to be a very long podcast if we start doing what is a classic, isn't it?
Let's move on. Jesse, talk to us about your classics.
My classic, there's actually finally been some progress in the will I make the midget work again, and the solution to making the midget work again is take the engine out. Because I finally got rid of the second dead engine from that car, and pulled it out on Sunday, spent a bit of time getting up on the ramps, took everything off, which I'm now well versed in doing, pulled it out on the Sunday evening and then dropped the sump and immediately found it full of metal swarf that used to be bits of the crankshaft and journal bearings. So there's some work that needs to be done there, but we're steps in the right direction. So it's now sans engine and everything is still looking good. A lot of the remedial work that I'd done previously to oil lines to the clutch throw bearing were all still looking in good health, and the clutch plate is looking pretty good. So we're not having too many issues coming out from some of the work I did, but it definitely looks like it overheated itself, boiled all of its oil, starved the crankshaft, which those engines are famous for doing regardless, and then just simply milled the crankshaft down to a billion tiny pieces, it seems. So yeah, my initial suspect idea that maybe it had sort of completely thrown a conrod, completely true, yeah.
Best guess is when it might be back on the road?
I'm aiming for Drive It Day 2025. I've got it marked down on my phone, on my calendar, sort of I know it's about 138 days at the moment until then. So I've got a reasonable window of time until, mid-April to get it sorted. So it's reasonable. I've got the winter to sort of get it all back together, do it all properly. I've got some specialists roped in, like I previously mentioned. Spent a lot of the NEC
Space in the workshop.
Yeah, space in the workshop, a big heater in the workshop as well, because my dad's finally moved out, so the family business workshop is now empty, apart from one giant gas heater in the corner that keeps the entire thing at about sort of a steady 8 degrees, which once you've got a set of overalls on is pretty comfortable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm very fortunate in that regard that I've got a huge amount of space to play with, and a decent amount of time budget-wise, but not a lot of budget.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes, but yeah, it's moving in the right direction. Although we'll get on to some of my other ideas later on when we get to the auction section. We'll jump in first to our something that affects more of James's section of the market, actually, in modern classics, because the lead news story in this week's issue is the sort of backed by TV's Fuzz Townsend. It's drumming up support for modern classics and crucially the people with the skills to maintain modern classics. Newer classics come laden with more and more intricate technology, and it's not as straightforward to fix as a DIYer. So the question I have is, when was the last time you tried to fix something electronic? And has the advance of the technology in the motor car rendered them impossible to fix as a DIYer?
Well, I can speak firsthand of the Peugeot 406. The electrics on that were quite, it was quite intense. It was like a modern car almost. It had everything in, and you had to, simply to get to certain sections, you had to remove so much to get to them. But thankfully, sadly, my dad was able to do a lot of that for me. But personally, when I had the small, the kind of smaller jobs, like on the Ford Puma, the 2000 Ford Puma I had, the heater console had stopped working. Well, the heater wasn't working at all, so ran a few kind of diagnostics on it and realised that simply replacing the entire console was possible. So I watched a YouTube video, and that was really helpful. And it took me half an hour maybe to bought a second-hand example off a online auction website, and and replaced it, and I was absolutely fine. I didn't have a cigarette lighter anymore though. That's the only thing. The console was exactly the same bar that, but I don't smoke, so it's all good. And with the Polo more recently, it's a little bit more embarrassing. As Jesse will know, the horn used to kind of go off randomly while I was driving it. Anytime I turned,
it wasn't random, was it? It was very specific times that it happened.
It did. Whenever I turned a hard right or any kind of right, so I was trying to kind of take really kind of interesting kind of curves and take bends without having to turn the steering wheel too much, which is weird. But anyway, I thought, all right. So I found myself a local auto electrician recommended by my garage, and I thought, brilliant. And they were fantastic. They booked me in, they turned up on my driveway, really friendly. I couldn't recommend them enough for any kind of auto electrician job. And immediately first, okay, it's just a faulty connection, a wiring issue, just needs, it's a kind of 30-year-old car, so it needs some new wiring somewhere. Anyway, it turns out he took the steering wheel off, took all the bits off. Turned out, literally, a screw had come loose. That's all it was, and the screw was, because it wasn't tight and into where it should be, it was earthing the connector.
Yeah.
And so every time the steering wheel rotated past the screw that was popping out a little bit, it would suddenly sound the horn off. So I was it's frustrating, quite embarrassing in supermarket car parks. But anyway, so
it feels like you've been pranked.
I laughed because I watched him just screw it back in. It was a 2-second job, and he said, all you have to pay is the call out charge, which was just under £100. But oh my word, that's £100. Had I had a little bit more, maybe confidence in myself to sort it, I probably could have sorted that myself. But you live and learn.
Yeah, sort of life doing the sort of wire up the brake lights to the horn joke and just sort of setting it off at the most inopportune times. Chris, when it comes to electrical stuff or sort of approaching problems on a modern car?
I'm terrible. So the last thing that I did, which was vaguely electrical, was on my old TR7. It was experiencing a battery drain. Didn't really know why. I just knew that the voltmeter was sort of dipping down as I was driving along, sort of thing. So bought myself a multimeter. Tried to sort of source all of that. And yeah, just absolutely clueless. I got my friend along. Didn't probably helped and didn't help that he was an electrician, so he knew exactly what he was doing, and understood exactly how a multimeter worked and all of the readings, things like that. Literally, his 7-year-old picked it up before I did. I was just completely clueless on the maths sort of thing. So in the end, took it to a specialist, and they were able to work out that it was just a duff alternator and replacing that solved the problem sort of thing. But yeah, me and electrics, I think we have some way to go.
Yeah, I'm much the same. I mean, the MG, like the TR7, has a constant sort of weird little power draw. I think it's the remnants of the radio that someone's left wired in. And yeah, it never held charge brilliantly. It didn't have a bit of dead cell in the battery, so it got worse and worse over the first year of that battery. But yeah, electricity, I can do basic bits, wiring in headlights, wiring in sort of brake lights and so on and so forth. But as soon as it gets to sort of, if I have to confront anything to do with sort of ECU, cam sensor positions on things like the Suzuki Jimny, I am going to be sort of really having to take my time and sort of leaf through owners' books and sort of shop guides from people in the club, because again, it's just something that isn't seen as incredibly approachable, and it's a bit specialist. So I think it is worth there being this sort of support for modern car engineers to be sort of preserved and sort of brought into the hobby, because the cars that they will have sort of, people that work in sort of Ford, Vauxhall, Audi dealerships, sort of the modern everyday car dealerships, are going to be used to seeing these problems. It's great if we could try and sort of bring them into the hobby as the cars that they would have started out working on reach classic status. People that are used to ECUs and wiring looms being a lot more complex, they're going to be used to fixing them when they fail. If we could find a way of encouraging them into the hobby and sort of finding a way of supporting them, would be quite practical, especially as we see more and more cars of that ilk and age arrive in the hobby. Otherwise, we're going to be left with sort of a huge fleet of cars from the sort of late noughties, early 2010s that are just beyond repair because it's one electrical item that's died and no one knows how to unplug it and plug it in, which is a shame for the loss of the car, and also a great sort of physical waste. That's a lot of car that could otherwise be saved with perhaps a £40 part if the intelligence to fix it is saved as well.
I do have one other incident where we took a DAF 33 to Holland, and it was something. I think it was the alternator had stopped charging. I'm not sure what happened for it. All I do know is we almost missed the ferry because the car wouldn't start. And the only way to get it to start was to take out some of the bulbs out of the rear lights, so it wasn't sending charge to those bulbs, so the car would start. It was bizarre.
Reduce the draw on the circuit.
Got the car started and then put the bulbs back in. But I was with technically minded people that could do that. It wasn't me. I'm like that.
Can you bump start one of those? Because they've got the variomatic transmission, haven't they? So it's not you've not got a solid link to bump it through.
I don't know why we didn't at the time, but I'm not sure. Yeah, but I must admit that I didn't know there was as many auto electricians out there as there actually are. I was quite surprised by that. So maybe this kind of, the section of modern classics that requires so much electronic attention is going to breed a lot more specialists and jobs for people in that market.
Yeah, it's definitely a niche market and a niche industry, but there's the skilled people out there. It's just finding a way of sort of claiming them into the classic hobby and making sure we can sort of make use of their talent and ability as the years go by.
Yeah,
I think you make a good point. I don't think it's impossible to fix these cars. We all agree that knowledge is key. And I think, as you said yourself, it's a willingness to spend the time fault finding. I think a lot of people it's not just a consideration of cost of money, a financial sort of setback. It is the amount of time it can potentially take to do these things, and that is a genuine consideration. If you're a younger enthusiast, perhaps you have dependents or just other commitments with work that mean that you don't have that luxury of time. But I think it's very car dependent as well. The cars that you identified in the news story are from sort of the 90s and the early noughties, and I think there's a world of difference between a Caterham 7 and a Bentley Continental GT. So yeah, I read the article. I agree with what Dominic Taylor learned from the Association of heritage engineers says about safeguarding the knowledge. I think it's also about incentivizing sharing this knowledge. You talk about your YouTube videos and how they were a massive help sort of thing. I think that's exactly right. I think there's plenty of people that can relate to that. Used to be Haynes manuals that we go to for these sort of things. I think more and more it's your forums, it's your WhatsApp groups and things like that. And I think, for most people, they just get a kick out of knowing that they've helped out, a fellow human being. But it might be that we need to look at how to sort of make these sort of dedicated jobs, or might be that there's areas of specific car clubs that have registrars that specialise in this sort of thing. So I think that's as part and parcel of it as anything else.
I think, definitely the sharing of information is going to be as crucial as the preservation of it, because I think the nature of sharing it adds to the preservation. The more people that know it, the longer that information is likely to circulate. So it's positive steps, and again, it's one of those things that as we're seeing the hobby change and evolve, that needs to be sort of remembered. You sort of go, it's easy to sort of lose your head and think classic car, it's Capris, it's MGBs, things that have like 4 electrical items on them, so it's easy to fix when one of them goes wrong. But we're seeing that sort of evolution into more modern classics, more electrical classics, more sort of electrically and technical classics, and you sort of go, okay, we're going to have to start thinking a bit more about it. I mean, the Toyota Prius was 1997? Mm-hmm. That is not far away from becoming a classic of sort of 30 years old status. There's going to become a point where someone at home is going to start trying to do DIY on a hybrid car, and I think also it brings to mind safety as well.
Bring up safety is a minute ago,
Yeah.
And so many of those electrical systems are linked to things that make your car safe to drive,
Yeah, and sort of advanced driving features as well.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got a small, as I always say, a little bit of information, a little bit of knowledge is sometimes a dangerous thing. You know a little bit, but you don't know quite everything.
There is an interesting bell curve in theory that supports that as well. Sort of a small amount of knowledge makes you just as dangerous as someone with a lot of knowledge in that same area. But
that's where communities come key, sort of thing. I think if you get those voices who are putting themselves out there as being sort of these knowledgeable individuals, and they're not. It's good when you're in a community where they can sort of just kindly sort of correct them and sort of say, I'm not sure about this. You listen to the majority of voices in those situations, don't you? Sort of thing, so.
A healthier average helps keep things sort of a lot more sensible.
Exactly, but that again comes into it. It's the idea of just the incentivizing of sharing, not necessarily parts, not anything like that, but just knowledge in general, sort of thing. Yeah. Because I think particularly in the digital age, it's very difficult to find hard and fast correct information. So I think that's particularly owners clubs is where they sort of stand out as being an area where you can go and get that information that is backed by something approaching authority, something approach a body that represents itself as being champions of a particular car or group of cars. I think that's going to be really important.
Yeah, that sort of that official or official-ish backing that you get from people that you recognise as being experts in the field of your car.
As interested in it and as vested in the survival as you are.
Yeah, and that way you sort of get that certainty because they want to see that car, that model thrive as much as you do, I think is good.
I think type of car comes into it a bit as well. If you are working on a Mini or anything that we've got around this table, fair enough, but I can't imagine even a really well-equipped electrician wanting to fix his own Bentley. Or something that's really more high end. I think I've got the money and time to probably go to a specialist, or just it's probably so expensive and intricate that they would just go to a specialist.
Yeah, I think. Even you look at sort of late 80s Porsches, things like the 928 and so on. That's where you start getting into those very technical wiring looms, digital dashes as well. They came through in sort of the late 70s, early 80s. Replacing and sort of healing LCD displays is also going to be a really interesting thing we see the advance on as sort of the enjoyment of later 80s cars as they age into sort of natural classicdom over 40 years becomes sort of more prevalent.
I think there's a world of difference between sort of an inoperative sort of electric seat and the anti-brake system not working sort of thing. And unfortunately, they all both sort of fall under that idea of electric sort of thing. So I think very car specific, very sort of system specific as well, sort of thing. So, but that's why we just need to. The classic car movement was founded on that idea of sharing of knowledge, of sort of an idea that we want to sort of see as many cars survive as possible. Just need that to continue, and just need to foster that in a new generation. which is possibly the bigger challenge here.
I think it'll be an interesting one to see how it develops and sort of how the hobby advances. We'll shuffle on towards the buying section of our paper, and we'll move the podcast on with it as well to the latest point, which is classic commercials. And they're on the rise. It's discussed in the big story in our buying opener section. Escort vans seem to be leading the way to a certain extent, and the blue oval is often at the front of many classic trends. We see that with sort of performance cars from the 80s. We saw it with things like the sort of sports coupes from the sort of 60s, 70s with the Capri leading the charge there. So do you reckon we'll see a follow-on here with other classic commercial vehicles following on? And do you think events like Festival of the Unexceptional have driven an interest and an acceptance for this class of classic?
Yeah, I mean, vans in general, they're becoming more expensive because there are fewer survivors. You've seen it with the likes of the Morris Minor vans, you've seen it with the minivans. These cars lead hard lives, they're used as tools, they're not seen at the time as being anything other than just a means to an end. So when they're no longer useful, they get binned off, that's the end of them sort of thing. So it's completely understandable. You see that with the likes of the Ford Escorts. It's the Mark 1s that we particularly focus on, isn't it? From Anglia Car Auction's most recent sale.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the classic commercials have a use to enthusiasts today, just because if you think about the people who go to shows, who go to weekend shows, things like that, fantastic for swallowing camping gear, all of the things to set up your stand or whatever to support your car club. I can see sort of the trend continuing. I think, looking at sort of the 90s and noughties, I can see car-based vans sort of increasing in popularity. Fiesta stands out if we're going to stay with Ford, but even things like Corsas and even Polos and things like that, I can certainly see, just when you're talking about the Festival in Exceptional and that sort of maybe sort of slightly anti-cool sort of cars, these, the Fiesta vans and things like that, they're just background cars. They just sort of exist on the high street and blend in sort of thing. And it's those cars that sort of now stand out, isn't it? Because there are people realising so few of them, they have that moment of, I can't remember the last time I saw one of these.
Yeah. I saw Lost in a 40 van on the side of the road the other day, completely being used as a utility van still. Ladder was on top. It was lovely to see. It almost felt like one of the way we were images. But I think with commercials, I mean, certainly from my point of view, it's the graphic logos on the side that just invoke that nostalgia. Sometimes you go to shows, you see the old British Telecom logo or something like that.
GPO
or even just something you never even heard of, like a name and Sons underneath it, and it takes you. No, it doesn't take me back that far, because it wasn't alive in the 40s and 50s, but it certainly kind of, it just invokes that extra nostalgia as much as the car does. Then you suddenly see a logo or some graphics on the side of it, and it's that. You see it at a car show, and people are just looking lovingly at them.
Yeah, I know the data post delivery, which sort of re-emerged on a couple of sort of 70s and 80s touring cars on the historic racing circuit. Everyone went, oh, data post, I completely forgot about that. It was one of those really cool liveries. But I was also thinking about things like the Astrovan as well through the late 80s, early 90s. Yes. Such an iconic piece of street furniture that I don't know when you're going to find another one of those come up, but fabric seats, an empty back end, it's going to be perfect for sort of rocking up to Festival of the Unexceptional. You get the camping chairs out, you sit down, you have a great day. But equally, I mean, I think somewhere in South London, I've definitely seen someone running around with an old Morris minivan that's still being used as their business van because, well, it's great because it actually circumvents ULEZ because it's a pre-1984 car, so it's great. And they run a very small business, so they only need a very small car to get their stuff in. But
it's a way of standing out from the crowd as well, isn't it?
It's a marketing
you
piece.
Have something that's nostalgia or retro-based, it makes sense to have a vehicle that sort of is on brand with that. I mean, what I would say is that I think in general, one of the trends that we've seen over the years, more recent years, is that enthusiasts are generally being less siloed. There's a greater interest and acceptance in things that are just old and interesting. And I think, that idea that you go to Festival and Exceptional and you see genuine curios and I mean, it's the sort of show where you go and you see cars that you've only ever sort of seen in photos online or maybe in books, and they're there in the net sort of thing. So like a genuine sort of one of three survivor in the UK sort of thing. So
it's almost like it's what was unacceptable is now acceptable, and anything goes. And I think that Festival of the Unexceptional is a brilliant show. I can see other shows adopting maybe that kind of unexceptional award or trophy for maybe some of their competitions.
I'm looking forward to sort of the next big concourse that has sort of a sort of subcategory for that sort of completely forgotten class of vehicle.
That would be nice.
It'd be great to see sort of the lovely manicured lawns with Paganis and Ferraris laid out across it, and then just in the corner there's like an Astro van, and then there's a Transit, and then there's like a sort of LDV Wreckers van. You sort of go, ooh, that's more interesting.
I think they're also becoming like much more classic, even some of the modern classics, because they just don't have like a traditional car with an extra bit put on the end to make it a van anymore. I mean, if you look at, say, the last one, I mean, like look at say the Ford Escort. That Ford Escort vans was still in production well into the Ford Focus era. I don't think they ever made a Ford Focus van, a commercial van of any kind, did they?
No.
So, I mean,
you could get the Fiesta as a van, but never the Focus. Yeah.
But that's what. At that point, I think they started a lot of car manufacturers like, oh, we're going to build a minivan or sort of that kind of commercial van of some kind. It's going to be a commercial van from the start, and that's all it's going to be.
Isn't it Transit Express now? So it's like a
custom.
Custom,
yeah. And it's lovely. It was so lovely to see. Even now, like you kind of like. Probably a bit of a Ford fan here, so it's not lovely for everyone to see, but for me it is. You see like a Ford Escort van living long into the kind of Ford Focus era. I was a bit of an Escort fan myself.
I mean, I think I'm right in saying the last car to roll off, I can't remember if it was Cowley or Longbridge, but it was the Metro van. And the Metro van long outlasted the actual Metro. It was one of those weird things.
It was the last. Same the case with the Morris Minor. It was the van that went out last, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was the last car to be produced with the Morris badge on it, or the Rover badge on it, or something, or the Austin badge on it. It was the Austin Metro van. Yeah, it was the Austin version. That was the last Austin to be produced. Was the Metro van, because it was popular enough and still in use enough to sort of keep going on. But again, I think also there's going to be this nostalgia for them, because a lot of people will have had a van at some point. If it's a tradesperson's, they will have those fond memories from sort of starting out being given the worst van on the fleet and then sort of getting the slightly better one that they moved up through companies, or if you're a postman, if you're a tradie, everyone's had some sort of van-based experience. So there's going to be this nostalgia that arrives. I've certainly had it when I used to drive little Vauxhall combo vans at the post office. They were absolutely horrid little things. And again, I used to be chucked like the oldest possible thing ever. But you sort of treat it like a rental because it's a fleet car. And they were the most fun things to hoon around St Albans, just chucking post out the back of.
My mum used to run her own gardening business, and she had a Corsa B diesel van, and yeah, it was just ridiculously tinny. I had a Corsa C at the time, so it was only a generation previous sort of thing. But yeah, just the experience of driving was just so different because it was a van. It was a hollow machine sort of thing. So you mentioned about concourse. I do think that vans have actually been entered into concourse. If I remember rightly, wasn't it the pride of ownership recently? In the past couple of years, was it a Daihatsu Hijet? I think the Kai vans from Japan, I think they're another shout for things that will increase in popularity. So
yeah, mini trucks and minivans of that sort of scale, certainly in America, are proving to be incredibly popular. Out there, you get the little Daihatsu Hijets, the sort of flatback trucks and everything. They're accepted as counterculture to the huge American trucks that are being sort of so popular at the moment, the giant F-150s, 250s and so on. People are just sort of going to Japan and going, well, I can have that for like less than a tenth of the cost, and it carries exactly the same size pallet in the back, but it costs me a tenth of the price to buy and a tenth of the price to fuel. And they're genuinely quite fun little things, and because they weigh nothing and they're rear-wheel drive and usually have quite a fizzy 660cc engine, they're quite a good bit of fun to chuck about. And Japan has a huge culture for modifying them, so if you're going out there and buying one, you can get the parts for it, you can keep them on the road. In the UK, they make a hell of a lot of sense because our roads are sort of naturally sized to something that small. But
well, we have our own take on them as well, the likes of the Bedford Rascal, things like that. I can see them again sort of in vehicles that will draw that, because I think they are just fun.
Yeah.
I think they are just fun to look at. Sort of
I mean, we saw Festival of the Unexceptional this year, a Toyota Hilux one. That is, to all intents and purposes, a commercial vehicle. This trend is starting up, and I think it's a matter of time till we see like a Bedford Rusk or something win an award at something, or we see an Astrovan winning a pride of ownership at the NEC. It's coming.
People are even converting cars into commercial van types. So the same show, Festival of the Unexceptional, They had a Corsa van. Someone turned a Corsa into a Corsa van just for fun.
Yeah,
it was fantastic.
Panel off the windows. And
Yeah.
I mean, in South Africa, I'm right in saying you could get the Corsa C as a pickup truck as well.
How the heck does that work?
Really, really small pickup truck, yeah. But you could get it as a bakkie, which was
bulbous. How do you turn the hatchback into?
It just stops and then goes down to
Nice, okay.
yeah. I'll get you a picture later. I'll insert a picture here on the video feed as we go along. But yeah, you could get, I think it was the Corsa C or Corsa B as a pickup truck, which absolutely baffled me when I went to South Africa. I was like, that is the smallest pickup truck. It's built on a Corsa. Is that
Just
your
looks
truck?
like
It's really far away.
Yeah.
If you guys had garage space and money, would you guys buy a commercial vehicle just for fun? Just put it around? Is it your thing?
My dad swears by his vans. I mean, he's to go completely off topic. He's really into his surfing and his wakeboarding. And yeah, he advocates having these sort of vehicles for these sort of hobbies. So yeah,
A classic.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's a modern one that he does, but I think you could probably convince him to get a Mark 1 if he can afford it. So.
Yeah, definitely a commercial of some sort. I know you and I, James, agree on the idea that the Toyota Hilux from Back to the Future is arguably one of the coolest sort of pickup trucks you could possibly attain. Yeah, that's a commercial vehicle. I've grown up around vans. Like some of my earliest memories are sitting in the middle seat on the front bench of a Ford Transit and being allowed to move the gear lever as my dad sort of dips the clutch pedal. So I don't know. I've always thought like a sort of classic Transit as like a race vehicle would be pretty fun to sort of have a little race car tucked on the back of, sort of liveried up with almost sort of toolboxes strapped to it. Would be quite fun.
Me and James have seen it at Ford Heritage, haven't we, with the racing Transit. So.
Oh, the Super Transits as well. Yeah, again.
Yeah, even one of their original first Transits as well, like a lovely beige colour
with the sliding side doors as well. Yeah.
It's I still love those kind of escort vans with the BT logo on. I said it earlier. This thing, especially the old yellow and blue logos.
There is, again, it's the nostalgia for stuff that you've just seen floating around. You don't know, it just sort of evokes that younger memory of childhood. But yeah. Anyway, we'll see what classic commercials do in the coming years as obviously that trend develops. We'll move on to the auctions section and a quick auction review because, of course, the last time I had the two of you sat in here, we were going over the H&H and Hampson auctions, and they've now been and gone, so we can obviously reveal the prices of the cars that we discussed. I picked out a Monza Corvair for the convertible section, didn't sell. Unsurprisingly, it was on horrible wheels. James, your P100 didn't sell.
What?
No.
Oh, because it didn't meet estimate.
I believe it's probably because it didn't meet estimate or reserve, so I haven't fully delved into it. I've only got sort of sold on prices in front of me. Chris, you picked
it smoothly. I can't remember what I chose.
You picked an SL for the convertible range.
Oh, yes, I did.
Didn't sell.
Oh.
Hear that? Listen to this, listeners, classic car readers and listeners. We select 3 cars and now bought them. Is that because we're saving them for ourselves?
Possibly because the three of us aren't very good at picking auction trends, which is why we don't write the auction sections. My Passat W8, however, for the family car choice.
The natural choice.
Yeah, £3,825 for a very technical Volkswagen Passat.
Wow. You need all your savings left over to fuel it.
Yes. Chris, you picked the Renault 16 for that one.
I did, yeah.
You did better, £5,625.
Is that all?
Yeah. Someone's got a steal. Perhaps they
That was estimated at like 8 to 10 if I remember rightly, wasn't it?
It must have had a really low reserve on it then. And obviously in this week's issue we got a Renault buyer's guide in it, I think.
If you say so.
Renault 16, I think.
Yeah.
It is, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
So the issue on sale
At the moment you can you can go out and buy it, yeah. You can go.
Sorry, I work ahead quite a bit. I'm working on January issues here, guys. So apologies.
Yeah, it's 2025.
I'm not in
Also in the family car category, James, you picked a Citroen DS, didn't you?
Oh,
that was our favourite, wasn't it?
That must have sold.
Didn't sell.
What?
Yeah.
Is it the time of year? Cause
possibly the time of year. No one's buying sort of rust-prone classics at this point in the year. They're sort of, if you're buying something, it's going to be a garage queen. You're going to pay top dollar for it.
When I sold my Peugeot in the November auction, I had a lot of people telling me that I picked the wrong time of year to sell it, or the wrong time of year to get a good price for it, or more to the point. So it is interesting about, if anyone's listening and they're thinking about buying or selling, maybe it's a really good buyer's market this time of year. But a better seller's market during the summer months.
Interesting thing to write down, we'll put it to the editor. Is there a seasonality to buying different styles of car? Because there is sort of the old sort of phrase of it's better to try and sell a convertible at the start of summer and buy one at the start of winter, because people go into summer going, I'll have a convertible for summer. So that's why I bought my MG Midget in the midst of winter, because I figured it was probably going to be a bit less interested.
I think it's intended use as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
So if it is that it's going to be just a hobby car, maybe it is that seasonality still sort of endures. If it's your Passat where you can sort of hop in it and drive it home and then
just
maybe
buy it
not
and
so
use
much.
it. Yeah, it's not as impacted. Then the third category you had was sort of classy coupes. Chris, you had a Volvo P1800, rather lovely car, £16,875.
Yeah.
Which is pretty good money for one of them, and it was a nice condition car.
We were a little bit unsure about condition. They hadn't sort of filled in the listing at the time, had they? And it was the gunmetal one, wasn't it?
Gunmetal on mini
slightly
lights.
Solid.
Yeah.
I think it was on mini lights as well. So it was, slightly resto mod look. I'm not surprised that it sold. I think it's entirely up to the next buyer whether they want to sort of take it to standard or continue on that route of improving and slightly modifying. So yeah, it's a good one to go with.
Yeah, certainly a better choice than James's Audi R8, which was unsold, and my Aston Martin V12 Vantage, which was unsold.
So hold on, so that's 3 and 9 as a hit rate.
No, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. Yeah.
Oh, none of mine 3 sold at all.
Yeah, Chris did the best of us. He picked the two sellers, which
Your
was the
Passat
16 and the P1800, and my Passat. Everything else, as when I checked yesterday when I wrote this out, was unsold.
Well, like I said, my 3 is still available for me to buy.
Yes.
A very late Christmas present.
Yes, quickly get shot of the Polo and buy yourself either a P100, the Audi R8, or the Citroen DS. If we had to twist your arm, which one are you going for?
Oh, the DS every time. I think it's a bucket list car for me. I'd love to just drive. I know it's a French car, but I'd love to drive to France and then just pool around and then come back again. But yeah, lovely.
Get a lot of knowing Gallic nods at it as well.
Yeah, it's just a timeless, elegant machine, I think.
Interesting enough, though, tie into this week's issue, it's being celebrated at next year's Retromobile in Paris as well. It is the sort of star car of the show. So
February's Retromobile.
you can read about that and Out and About in this week's issue. See, I do plan this ahead to try and tie it to just about tie it in with each issue that goes live. So we'll move on to auction preview, and I asked you guys to delve into the catalogues of Manor Park Classic and Bonhams. They both have upcoming auctions. Bonhams, I probably sort of shot it down a bit with the category of picking a perfect classic daily. So it must be pre-1984, and it must be a car that you can sort of tackle everything you could ever need to do with, which Bonhams isn't really an auction house that sort of sells.
I would dearly love to sort of a DB7 V12 as my daily car, but maybe a little bit of a tough sell. But then again, you're advocating a W12 Passat as a family
car. Bonhams, I being a single gentleman with no children to look after, could just about argue that maybe a Lamborghini, what was it, not a Testarossa, it was the Countach would be a dailyable car because I have so little to ever carry with me.
I can see you in that.
But alas, I've picked something a little more sensible from the Manor Park Classic catalogue. So, Chris, we'll start with you and your choice, just before you go to sip your coffee.
I picked the 1965 Ford Cortina 1500 Super, first generation model. I call it the England edition, just to paint a picture for listeners. It is white with the red flash along the flanks, and the interior is just red dashboard, red plastics, red carpets, red everything, which kind of suits me because that's kind of along the lines of my Mini. So it's got an estimate of £7,000 to £8,000. I think that's a little bit on the conservative side. I know that when I was looking earlier in the year, there was various cars that I was looking for when I eventually ended up with the Mini, but I was looking at various family cars. Cortina was definitely up there as one of the ones that I was interested in. They tend to be sort of like in the £10,000 to £15,000 bracket. I do wonder if this car being an automatic maybe sort of tempers it slightly. But I didn't know this. It's actually a column change on the Cortina. So there's not
3 on the tree.
Yeah, exactly. So plenty of room. So there's that there.
Room
as
up
well.
front for an additional person. Because would that be pre-seatbelts as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no seatbelts, and again, much like the Mini, if I was to go down this family route, I would need to install seatbelts in the rear to make it actually usable as a family car. It's been restored. Bonhams unfortunately can't date the restoration, but there is photo records of that restoration taking place. They describe it as tidy and usable. I think, for £7,000, £8,000 estimate, it's well worth a look. The pictures are all online. They have a video that you can view as well. So yeah, definitely worth a look.
Yeah, that would be a rather interesting one. I'll go and grab the screenshots.
And 21,000 miles, which again is really quite low. 4 owners. It sounds like, again, you can read all the details online, but it sounds like it's been passed around within the family. It doesn't sound like it's really sort of, found itself sort of, going far and wide. So I think it's just a really tidy looking car. So
It's been sort of second car in the family, just used for sort of the odds and ends, sort of nipping off to here, there and everywhere. James, a pre-1984 sort of daily car, everything you could ever need to do with a car, but it must be tax exempt. What have you found and which auction house?
Well, you challenged me to find one on Bonhams, and I did.
Ooh.
Because you did. I've gone for. Let me see if I can find it again. It is the VW Type 2 split screen 23 window microbus.
Yeah.
Only had one owner in California for most of its life, so it's lived a very healthy life in the sun. The thing is with this one, it's the only one I could find that is a really everyday use kind of car. But what I consider everyday, something you use for everything, to also give you some performance. It's a lovely all-round. It'll take family here, there, and everywhere. It's a fantastic car. Lovely to see it on the road, and you can put things in the back. You need to cart things around.
Yeah, some people might question it, but I see 2 or 3 every day where I live, used all year round. So
23 windows is a lot.
It's a lot of windowing to keep it clean, yeah.
But you imagine taking that you can take the kids to school, then you can pick them up, take them to the Lake District for enjoy those panoramic
do a
views.
school trip with 23 windows.
You can, but you can get those panoramic views you can have. So I took your challenge there, but if I was to go for the Manor Classics one...
Well, hold on, go back. How much is the Type 2?
Oh, actually, it's probably it's priced at between 20 and 22,000 pounds.
Well, it's not bad.
It's had a lot of money invested in it too, as well. So it has. It's trying to.
Is it orange? Am I imagining that?
Yes.
Yeah, that sort of dark orange, almost red colour, isn't it? It looks pretty handsome actually. I did have a flick through the catalogue.
It is lovely, yeah. And so I'd say it's about right for that. I mean, they're very popular at the moment. The Splitties.
They've always been pretty popular, to be fair. They're one of those sort of steadfast classics.
Yeah, I mean, there were so many in the Manor Parks, or so many post-84 cars, like the Cosworth, Sapphire Cosworth 4x4. But I'm not going to go into that. We're talking about tax exempt. So for the Manor Park one, for something that's got the all-round kind of, you could take the family out, or you could pick them up, kids up from school. But this one, you can also, if you want to have a bit of fun, a bit of performance, it's the 1969 Vauxhall Victor V8 Hot Rod.
Oh my gosh, yeah. No,
I did see that, yeah.
It can do everything. Look, it's got rear doors to put. I hope you've got seats in the back. I haven't actually checked.
So that's
we've got seats in the back.
Is that the FD generation or the FE?
I think it's the FD. So it's but estimate between 7.5 and 8.5, which I think is fair.
What V8 has been put in it?
Yeah, it's got seats in the back with seatbelts, importantly.
Yeah, I don't need seatbelts in the back, but
It's a Chevy 5 litre, so that would be a 302, 305, somewhere around there. That is hefty.
And I'm gonna forget the combi, because you've got a bench front seat as well. You can, if you want to put someone in the middle, but if you're there cruising along and you want to kind of one arm around the other half, you don't have a long arm once you're strapped in.
Yeah, no. I will shoot down some aspect of the practicality because it has got a fuel cell in the boot, which takes away a lot of its space and practicality. But
That's what the back seats are for.
I know, I've got one stepdaughter, so there's a load of space next to her for some.
yeah, there's space that's not being used in the back. Yeah,
They
no.
don't travel light, but hey, you have to with
It
it.
wouldn't be you if you didn't pick something unconventional. So
Yeah,
I'm going to give you that.
I mean, the thing is, what I think is working against it is putting the word hot rod in there. So I think a lot of people might not look at bidding for something like that because they might think it's for track only.
Yeah, it might be put off by it. They might think it's just set up for the drag strip. Yeah, so it might go low.
Rod and you think, well, okay, I can't get that on the road, but
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah.
Automatic transmission, I might add.
Yeah, it's going to have like a big GM TH350 or something stuck behind it. They don't detail what the gearbox is. It just says a Chevy gearbox and a Jaguar back axle. But no, it does look like that would shift quite nicely.
But if someone could, it looks like it's been rebuilt lately, or the engine's been rebuilt because it's only got 55 miles on the odometer.
The reset it then, yeah.
Yeah, it must have done it when they did the build.
If someone could buy one of those two cars, either that or the Combi, just so the next podcast we can say one of them sold.
Yeah, if you, I say pointing at the camera, do buy it, let us know, or at least do, so James can at least pick one car that sells at auction. I'm sticking with Manor Park Classics actually for my pick, and a car that I may or may not have chucked a very small online bid in for no apparent reason other than I really quite like it.
You have stuck a bid in?
Yeah.
Wow.
It is up for no reserve. There is no estimate listed. It's a 1984 Saab 99 GL.
Oh, I saw that.
The
Yeah.
For that.
No, this is the all in white one. The beige
right.
one, the beige one's got an estimate on it. It's slightly a lot better condition. This is
Oh, I was looking at the beige one.
This is 139,000 miles on it, so it's relatively high mileage, but it's a Saab, so it'd be pretty reliable.
What year was that, sorry?
1984 Saab 99 GL, so it just fits within our bracket. Obviously, big 4-seater, 5-seater sort of saloon, decent sized boot, it's reliable. It's got heated seats. In 1984, Saab fitted it with heated seats. You still get the night panel as well, so you can dim most of the lights apart from the speedometer as to where the needle gets to as well, which I've always found fantastically cool on
It's a
Saab.
perfect excuse to learn more about electrics, isn't it?
Yes.
Does it say the heated seats will still work?
It doesn't specify if they work, but again, it comes with the really cool Saab Scania badge. For me, again, all it wants for is a set of Sibby fog lights on the front, and it'd be perfect. It's a 5-speed as well, so it'll cruise along nicely. It's got all the room in it that I need as a single man, and room for my girlfriend and luggage to go away with on a weekend. And classic support for them is growing. They're sort of Saabs and that sort of Scandinavian group are becoming more and more popular on the classic scene, so the clubs and the parts are more available for them. I believe the engine is actually just a Triumph block that Saab sort of fattled with, because they were looking at putting in the Triumph Stag V8, gave up and instead just turbocharged the inline Slant 4 from Triumph. But it's a perfect daily. I think for me, it is a very usable daily car and pseudo rally spec. Yeah.
I love that Saab.
Yeah, but I do have a very small, I should specify, very, very small online bid on it. So if you're listening to this, don't bid on it. I really want this, so please don't bid on it.
Have you met the estimate?
I don't know, there isn't an estimate on it. There's no estimate, no reserve. So I could have it for the, I will stipulate, very, very small amount of money I put in on this that I will not be chasing with further bids. But yeah, there we go.
No, I'm just reading about it. It looks good on the mini lights, the Ronald light, the mini lights, and sunroof as well, glass sunroof.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
Heated seats for winter and glass sunroof for the summers.
Yeah.
All year round.
Blue velour heated upholstery. What more do you want? Nothing screams 1984 more than that. So yeah, it is an interesting looking car, and I don't know. I think it's because I've sort of in the back of my mind need to do some work on the Jimny. I'm going to need a third car at some point when the work on the Jimny inevitably overruns and it's left without a front axle for weeks on end. So for me, the Saab is sort of picturing it as a stopgap at the moment, but we'll wait and see. MOT till October 2025, so it won't need another MOT after that point as well.
Is that turbo?
I think it's got
turbo
turbo
on the back as well.
Exactly. So
Look at
when the midget breaks down, I can then go and recover it with the Saab. I've thought this through. You can see the logic that's happening here.
Has anyone looked at that 1968 Volkswagen Carmen Gear? That's a gorgeous car. I mean, it's got back seats, but not a huge amount of back seat space. But
Yeah, I'm not getting car seats in that.
It is
So no, I didn't.
it's lovely.
attractive looking custom example, which suggests that it's had a little bit of work done to it.
But it's the two-tone, isn't it?
Yeah, the interior has been recently redone on it as well, which does look nice.
I almost picked the 1971 Land Rover, the 88 Series 2A, estimate of 67, and it is in Land Rover green with the white roof. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a 2.5 diesel with the 7 seat configuration at the back as well. So
Yeah, the benches in the back.
Because I won't be able to get car seats in it. Although my friend, he has a Land Rover, and he's trying to invent some sort of Isofix bar that he can put in that sort of situation, so he can have car seats facing each other, sort of thing. So on the 7-seat configuration.
I reckon that's doable. I think you could do it. I mean, with the one, well, it'd be the 109 or something is the next chassis size up from that, where you get the mid row and then the rear bench seats as well. You can get up to about 20 people in those quite easily.
I mean, I do wonder what is going to be faster, an automatic 1500 Cortina or a 2.5 litre diesel Series 2A. But yeah,
Naturally aspirated.
Not going anywhere in a rush either way, am I? So
I've seen something for Keith Adams to bid on, a 1984 Audi 80 Quattro. Looks gorgeous.
well, our senior contributor is all about the Audis, isn't it?
Yeah, I hasn't got this one yet. But
He's got two at the moment, so.
Professionally converted and upgraded by Paul's Classic Car Restorations in Mansfield.
We could spend all day doing this.
We could do.
It is slightly too
75
easy to just
cars.
keep looking through it. I mean, if you want to buy a Jaguar that's a proper Jaguar, there's a good list of those on there. We won't get into that argument. Yes, yeah, there's some very tasty ones in there. Yeah.
Car shopping is great. Car window shopping is great.
That's why I made this a section on the podcast, because I knew it'd be such not a time fill, that sounds pessimistic, but a great way to have an open discussion about the classic market. But yeah, there's some interesting choices out there. So between the three of us, who do we reckon has got the strongest option for a practical everyday family car? Because I do genuinely quite like Chris's idea of the Cortina. I think that is a sound pick.
Yeah, I think the Cortina is a good shout, but does it have the performance?
No.
Of the...
No, yeah, I like the Saab. I think the Saab is a good shout. I shied away from it. Yeah, I wanted to go slightly over, so.
I'm
Yeah.
going to throw my own hand in the ring here. I think for Vauxhall.
I think it's 2-1 for the Saab, I'm afraid.
Ah.
I love a big American V8, don't get me wrong,
It's a
but
hot rod.
yeah.
Hot rod in name. You can still drive to school and take the kids.
Yeah, but on a wet, wintry day, accidentally spinning out as you leave the school and ploughing into a tree is not a cool look. Whereas at least in the Saab, you can leave and deploy all 90 horsepower furiously, and it looks decent. And with a stainless steel exhaust on it, it'd sound pretty fruity as well. But yeah, I think the Saab wins this one, I'm afraid to say.
Well, we'll see, won't we?
Yeah, we'll see. 2 weeks' time when it sells. Well, 7th of December is the auction, so don't bid on it. We'll see if it sells and see how well I do in this one. Please don't bid on it. I really, really want it. Because I've already envisaged the Our Classic section of help I accidentally bought a Saab. But anyway, that's pretty much all we've got time for on this week's issue of the Classic Car Weekly podcast. Of course, there is plenty more to enjoy in this week's issue of the actual physical paper. Go buy that instead of the Saab, which you can pick up in all good newsagents, or of course subscribe to, so you never miss an issue or have to set foot outside into the horrible winter weather to go and pick it up. You can have it brought to you, lap of luxury. Otherwise, we'll be back next week with a sort of up-to-date sort of look at that week's issue. What's going to next week's issue? I can't remember. You're about 8 weeks ahead of it. James, do you know what's in next week's issue?
Yes, in coming up, we've got a buying guide on a Triumph GR7. We've got the feature on the best handling classics. We've got 5 trials on a Ford Fiesta XR2, as well as much, much more. And we're also looking back at South Wales in 1991 in our The Way We Were franchise.
Oh, you need to make a plug for Next Generation Diaries as well. All I'm going to say is Max Power.
Oh, yes, yeah, it's the Max Power MGZR, isn't it?
It's not.
No, it's a
Rover
Rover
214. It's the Rover 214. So
Is it 214 or 25?
Yeah, it's the Rover 214, so yeah.
Ooh. It is a unique looking car, so look out for that in next week's issue, but make sure you pick up this week's issue in the meantime. Otherwise, thank you very much for listening, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
And of course, we'll be back with another edition and issue of Classic Car Weekly.